Today, we will look at how to represent data using bar graphs. Bar graphs should not be confused with histograms, which also make use of bars. However, there are quite a few differences between them, so it is important to take careful note of the format of bar graphs in case you are ever asked to draw them. Let's begin. Bar graphs represent unique values. This means that the graph shows items which are different to each other, like people's favorite fruit, different eye colors in a class, or the different pets a group of children might have at home. Bar graphs also have gaps between their bars, and all the bars and gaps are exactly the same width. Bar graphs are also great to represent word-based data, like from the tally table below. Here, I would create a bar graph using the favorite fruit column and my frequency column, which shows the number of people. But before I do, there are some important parts of a bar graph that we need to take note of. First of all, we need a heading, and we begin our heading by saying a bar graph showing. Secondly, we need to develop a scale for our graph, which refers to how much we're counting in as we go up. Thirdly, we need to have a label for our y-axis, which is our vertical line on our graph, usually found on the left-hand side. And we also need an x-axis label, which is our horizontal line or the bottom of our graph. We also need to use different colors since each bar represents a different item. So let's see how these different parts work together to create a bar graph. Well, first of all, I'm going to need a heading, and I'm going to make my heading a bar graph showing favorite fruit. Don't forget to underline your heading to make it neat. The next thing I need to do is decide on a scale. Well, I have 6 spaces that I could fill numbers in, and we generally leave the very top line and very bottom line open. If you wanted to, you could have a 0 at the bottom. My highest value in my table was 12. So if I've only got 6 spaces, a good scale to use would be counting in 2s. So I'll fill in 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. Our scale is found along our y-axis, so we would write our numbers here. But we also need to decide what these numbers represent to be able to label our y-axis. According to our table, these numbers represent the number of people who answered the survey. It is best practice to write this label sideways. Next, we are going to label our x-axis, and this is where we would put words for a bar graph. I'm not going to be able to fit in the words apple and banana and pear without the one word running into the next, so I'm also going to write these words sideways. I'm going to label my x-axis with favorite fruit. The next thing we're going to do is plot our points, but I'm going to start with pencil first to make sure I can rub it out if I make any mistakes. There were 5 people who answered for apples, but there is no 5 on our graph. However, we can see that there is a 4 and a 6, and 5 is halfway between the two of them. So that means that my bar for apple will go up halfway between 4 and 6. Likewise, for bananas, there were 9 people who responded to this option. 9 would appear between 8 and 10. There were 12 people who answered for pears, so I will draw my bar as high as 12. 6 people chose oranges, and 8 people chose grapes. Take a moment to take note of the gaps and the bars. They are all identical in their width, and this is how it should be in your bar graphs too. Now that I'm done plotting all my points and making sure that everything is correct, I can go over in different colors. We use different colors because each bar represents a unique item. Pause the video to create a bar graph to represent the following frequency table, which shows the number of people leaving for different holiday destinations. Let's see how you did. Firstly, you should have begun with a heading. In this case, an appropriate heading would be a bar graph showing the number of people going to different holiday destinations. Make sure to underline your heading once you've written it, and you can spread your heading out onto 2 lines like in the example. The next thing I'm going to decide on is my scale. Well, my highest number is 93, and that's a bit of an awkward number, so I'm going to round that off to 100. I can see here that I've got 10 gaps to fill in numbers, so a good scale would be to count in tens. Now that I have my scale, I need to label my y-axis. Sometimes it might be confusing knowing where to put the numbers and where to put the letters, and it's usually the case that the second column refers to your y-axis. According to my table, the second column shows the number of people, which is what I'm going to use to label my y-axis. So if my y-axis is the column to the right, my x-axis must be the column to the left, in this case my holiday destination, and this is what I will use as my x-axis label. I will then fill in the names of the different destinations at the bottom, and like before, I'm going to turn my writing sideways to be able to fit them in. Remember to leave gaps between each of your words, and to ensure that the size of your bars and the size of your gaps are the same width. We can now plot our points. 78 people are traveling to Thailand. Halfway between them would be 75, so 78 is slightly higher than that. 41 people are traveling to England. Again, 45 is directly between 40 and 50, so 41 must be just above the 40 line. There are 93 people going to Switzerland, and since 95 is directly between 90 and 100, 93 is going to be about halfway between 90 and 95. There are 54 people going to New Zealand. Since 55 is between 60 and 50, 54 is just below this midpoint. There are 67 people going to Hawaii, and since 65 is between 60 and 70, 67 is probably about the midway between 65 and 70. Now that I've plotted my points with pencil, I'm going to add color. And there you have it, a perfect bar graph.